Thanks, Dipji. Thanks, Sama, for this opportunity. And first of all, a warm welcome to all the participants who have joined here for the 20th session of the Analytics Wednesday, a program which was started about 20 weeks ago by Sama, and to just make sure that the data analytics platform gets the attention that it deserves. And we've got a whole host of good speakers who have come and spoken to us and enlightened us in the journey of data analytics as we have moved ahead. A lot of industry stalwarts has been the boon of this data analytics program. I have attended almost all of them. I wouldn't say all, but almost all. And I have been truly a beneficiary of this analytics Wednesday programs. Today we have another very eminent speaker in Naval Kishore Bajaj. He comes to us from Bangalore in this virtual world. It really doesn't matter where we are. And so Naval is a chartered accountant by profession and is a specialist in professional issues relating to corporate governance, risk management, regulatory compliance, information technology governance, and forensic accounting and investigations. In his 15 years of experience, he has served in leadership positions in various multinational companies, spanning multiple industries such as industry automation, automobiles, and ITES, and has worked in multicultural environments with professionals hailing across India, Japan, Europe, Asia, and the US. He has been a member of the expert groups of ICAI, formulating and revising the standards on internal auditing and standards on forensic accounting and investigation. If you think that he doesn't have personal time, yes, he has. In his personal time, he spends a lot of time analyzing economic affairs with respect to global supply chains, real estate sector, and macroeconomic factors on investment avenues in India. He's currently serving as the president of the Bangalore chapter of Bharatiya Vitta Salhakar Samiti, which is called BVSS in short, a leading think tank of finance professionals which advises government on various policy matters relating to economy, corporate governance, taxation, etc. He's a regular speaker on the topics related to economic policy and corporate governance in various forums. He loves to interact with young minds in various educational institutions such as MET Business School, Department of Economic Studies in CUK, Karnataka, Jyoti Nivas Women's College, Bangalore, which is a deemed university, International Business Valuers Association, and the like. His analytical views on budget, economy, and corporate governance are also published in leading newspapers from time to time. I could use the rest of the hour talking about Naval, but I think it's time that he gets the due opportunity to speak to us on data analytics, the journey that he has been through. He's been a personal friend of mine, and I've been associated with him for the last, I think now for 4 years or so. When I first met him in a conference in Infosys in Bangalore, and it has been a very pleasant journey for me. And I'm very happy today that I've got this opportunity, which Sama has given to me, to kind of host this evening. So, Naval, the floor is all yours. I'm sure there'll be a few questions in the chat box or in the wherever, or I think in the Q&A. So we'll take those questions towards the end, and we should have a stop by about 8 o'clock or so. So within this framework, I think let's freewheel, and the floor is all yours. Thank you, Naval, and we all look forward to a very exciting 55 minutes of time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I hope my voice is clear.
Yes, it is.
Okay, and such an honor for being introduced by none other than Satish Shenoy. I think you made my day, and that too such an elaborate introduction. I didn't expect it, sir. So once again, thank you so much. And you mentioned about our collaboration, and I must say that it has been even more pleasant, and I always admire you, and I'll keep learning from you. as we progress. And I would like to be in touch, all throughout the life, in fact, I would say. And same is the case with, I think, your dear friend Deepji Singhal. I think when he called me for this program, I was neck deep in work, but no one can refuse Deepji. The way he comes out with a proposal, you cannot say no. And I must tell you, I have a board meeting coming this Friday. And since morning, I have been working, but I could not say no to him. And that's why I'm here. So thank you very much for giving this opportunity.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Interact with I think because you guys are doing it every Wednesday, and it is commendable job to do, such an important topic every Wednesday. It requires a lot of energy, a lot of thought, and a lot of big network, which you already have. I have no doubts about it. But more so for the participants. I mean, I can see around 25 participants. So since this is a group of professionals, and it's a smaller group, I would rather keep it interactive. And in case in the flow, if you have any questions, feel free to chat. And in fact, I would like to. I don't get distracted. Not worry about that. Please raise your questions, and during the course of presentation itself, I would like to answer them from time to time. And Deepji, if you could also, and Satish sir, if you could also, help in coordinating that, because you have been there for all the past sessions, so you may have a better background. My approach of today's deliberation, I thought that I'll cover three angles, three aspects of data analytics, which I am personally a professional who always likes to, go to basics first. So back to basics is the approach. And therefore, I may start from what is happening around, what we can read in the newspapers, what is happening around us, just to keep abreast of the recent developments and what is in store for future. But then I would like to go back a little bit and see where, we have been as a profession, as internal auditors, as risk managers, or as compliance officers, how we have been, what has been our journey for last 15 years. We'll touch upon that, and then go a little further into what are the things that we have learned, and what are the data items which in my view are again back to basic approach, but maybe missed out. So that is my approach, and I would like to learn from this audience, all of you. Please give your comments, and in fact, they will help me in learning data analytics, because it's a journey and no one is expert in this. So I'll just put up my presentation. Just give me a moment. Is it visible?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll just keep my video off because some connectivity issue might happen, so that I'm more audible. Just a moment. Yeah. So as friends, as we discussed, today's topic is about data analytics. So let's talk about some trends. So some of the news coverage, which I tried to pick up from onwards, I'm just sharing it with you. So one is the corporate profiling behavior analysis to identify non-compliant entities. This statement was made none other than by the Minister of State Finance at that time, Mr. Anurag Thakur. Then we look at in June 2021, SEBI bets on artificial intelligence, machine learning, and plans to analyze data to track market manipulations. And the reason that they said was that they'd like to use technology to see how the market is being manipulated for insider trading and front running. And they said that we will use not only structured data, which is available in the databases of transactions, but also unstructured data, which means they would also be referring to some of your WhatsApp chats. They could also be referring to some of your social media, updates, messages, and some other unstructured data available to them. And then they are also preparing analytics platform, which will basically link various entities in the market, be it the ultimate company whose stocks are being traded, or be it brokers, be it intermediaries, be it market entities, and then automatic extraction of details from documents which are filed with SEBI, which will be in the PDF form that again, they will convert it into a readable format, and then they will analyze everything, collect it together, and then analyze where is the risk of insider trading, where is the risk of front running. One of the very simple examples I would say is whenever a company's results are coming, are expected to be very good. Normally, what should happen is, or they come as very good. Normally, what should happen is the price should go up after the announcement of results. But you would have seen in some cases, at least I have observed it, in some cases, after actual declaration of these results, the price falls down because the people, there are major investors who would have expected in anticipation, and then they just book the profits and go away. So it could be a pure, analyst's game and, pure data analysis based decision making, or it could be insider trading. So if it happens on a continuous basis, it could be insider trading. So this is just one example how they are going to look at it. Now another news item from income tax department, where Deputy Finance Minister, Minister of State Finance, he held a department for bringing transparency via digital tools into faceless assessments and everything. And you're all aware about what are the changes has done in the way they are sending notices, in the way they're identifying the possible tax default, and in the way they have expedited the refunds. Last but not the least is this news item, which tells about the market of the data analytics, the spending on big data analytics by Indian enterprises to touch $2 billion in 2021. So this is an estimate done by IDC, which says that there will be for the next 5 years, there will be a CAGR of 14.6%. And the banking and the telecom industries are going to contribute around 30% of this spend in 2021. And what is the reason why it is going to be spent like that? Because the industry wants to base its decisions on real-time data. And banking has the largest share in it because they want to use it for faster loan processing. They want to use it for gauging the customer satisfaction ratios, enhancing their productivity and performance as always. And if you would have seen the way, if any of you would have applied for a loan recently, you would have seen the pace of approving the loan and processing the file has really increased, and that is possible because of data analytics, because they are able to see the trends, they are able to look at your CIBIL ratings, and they have all this data available. They are able to look at your other unstructured data, and they are able to decide. So similarly for telecommunication, it is going to be the second leading industry, again an industry which is big on the usage of data, huge data they generate in terms of CDRs and in terms of the net usage, what kind of usage, which websites, etc. They have all the data, and they want to understand the customers, the business and overall operations, so that they can use this data in a more meaningful way, and they can actually sell this, these trends of data to other potential customers and earn a lot of money. Last, which is coming as a surprise, is also as per the news item that even the public sector organizations, they have also grown as data played a significant role in decision making. Their spending has also grown significantly as per this news item, especially during the COVID period. So these are some trends which show that the market is big and this is going to be the next big thing. Nothing new I am telling, but I'm just giving some facts and figures to you. Now, what are the regulatory trends? I just try to study them just for the sake of understanding what is there in the future from a regulatory point of view. Sorry, excuse me. Yeah. So the global, if you look at the global trends, the focus seems to be on unlocking the data silos. So one part of it has already been discussed and all of us are aware, which is about, protecting the data of the user. So if my data, my date of birth, my, usage of Facebook, WhatsApp, or my preferences, my Google searches, these are all the data which are useful for the marketing companies, for various organizations. So far you would have heard about discussions on ownership of that data, usage of that data, protection of that data, and so much of, I think processes would have been built. All of us are aware about GDPR and, its strict implications and similar other data globally. But what additional I could see, and I would like to share with all of you, is that now they are also talking about usage of data. They are not only talking about protecting the data, because somewhere they have realized that, just blocking something is not going to work, because there is too much of economic value associated to this data. You will never be able to stop usage of this data for marketing, sales, and research purposes. That is why they have started to think about regulating the whole thing. So if you look at what is happening in Australia and European Union one by one, in Australia, they are going to introduce something called as customer data right framework, which will allow the consumers or the users of, or the people whose data it is in Australia to require any business to transfer their data to another business of their choice. So then it will give you a right about, say your data is available in one of the Aditya Birla, entities, and then you ask them to, boss, I don't want to keep my data anymore with you. Please transfer it from here to Reliance Industries entity. So it is going to be possible with this framework. And then banking and the power sectors are the first ones to be impacted by this, because banking has the most of the data, so it's very natural. Power sectors, we'll have to study a little bit more why they say power sector, but this is what I'm able to share right now. Now, European Union, they are also having two acts which are in the process. One is Data Act and another is Data Governance Act. What it does is something similar to Australia. So business to business and business to government transfer of data is enabled through this legislation. There is an incentive for continued data generation. So they are not reducing the generation of data, they are increasing the generation of data because they have accepted that there is a clear value to it. And then they are creating the data exchanges and platforms that will form the whole infrastructure to do that. So the whole idea is to enable and regulate these data sharing arrangements, and there will be an intermediary from the government side, which will enable that how this data gets transferred from one business to another business in a proper legal way. So I hope this is very interesting for you. Any questions, please do keep sharing. Now, coming back to India, coming back home, we are all aware that Personal Data Protection Bill was introduced in 2019. It is still not approved. So having said that, India is also not far behind on working about these kind of frameworks, which I shared about Australia and European Union. Although the way India is trying to do it is a little different. It is called as DEPA. What it does, it is talking about sector-wise methodology, and it is not a legal thing, it's a technology-based solution which India is working at. And DEPA will allow users to transfer their data from data business that currently hold them to the where they want to use them. Again, similar to what is being done elsewhere. But here it is not a legal thing. It's a technology-based solution. That is the difference. And then already the account aggregator framework is now working in the financial sector. I think it happened only last month. 4 large banks have already started to use it. Another 4 are going to use it. And in August, 7 countries in India had, they came together to endorse a techno-legal approach to data regulation, which acknowledged that the solution to regulatory objectives is to explore how these technical frameworks could be incorporated in the way European Union and Australia Act, are going to work. So these technology solutions, they are trying to see how this can be used for the acts which are being done in Australia and European Union. So some very interesting things are happening around. And I personally see that it is going to change the way we look at data and the way we use the data going forward. I already see a question answer. Can personal data be sold without consent from the owner? See, right now, we don't have a very clear-cut regulation around this, but it is going to come. And I think the Personal Data Protection Bill 2019 is supposed to handle that. Somehow it is delayed, maybe because of the COVID scenario. So I'll treat that as answered. But in case you have further question, please feel free to ask. So what is the value of data? Why it is all happening? The value of data. Again, this is something that I picked up from news only. But why all this is being done is because regulators have also realized that there is a value of data. The company's product, its ability to generate data and intelligence capabilities are all linked now, because the more you know about the customer and their preferences, the better your product is aligned to them and better value you create for them and you earn more. It's very simple, logic. But the amazing part here is that the volume of data created is estimated to be 59 zettabytes, which is, and it will grow in 2.5 times in 4 years. That is what, the humongous amount of data is going to be generated. And much of this data is going to be artificial intelligence. There is a clear graph which shows the estimate from 2020 to 2024. And in terms of value to the industry, if you see the second chart on in the middle, it says that retail industry is going to be the most beneficiary of artificial intelligence and obviously so, because they are directly dealing with the customers. And second will be consumer packed goods, then travel. These are all entities which directly cater to the customers. And then it comes to transport, logistics, automotive, public and social sector. Then it comes to banking, insurance, basic materials, and so on. This is a McKinsey chart. And then just next to that, you see that distribution of data jobs, it is very skewed. If you see, most of the data specialists are working in US. So US continues to lead the innovation chart in that sense. Second comes India, but we are far, far behind, 5 times behind US. Yes, we can take pride in saying that, we are at the second, but just next to US, but we are far behind. In terms of, AI unicorns, US leads the way. India doesn't have, any figure into there. That means we have the resources, but we are not able to convert that into entrepreneurship, or maybe we have a funding problem. That is a different matter, not a matter of today's discussion, but this is interesting thing, what is happening around in data analytics world. Now, I mean, this is something, interesting, that government has unearthed fake invoice racket, involving 115 firms, again using data analytics, again using the, electronic data that is available under GST invoices. They simply compared the movement data with the invoice generation data, and they found these culprits, and it continues. After this news story, there have been many other news stories where they have unearthed the fake invoice records. So data analytics is big time favorite of our regulators, of the companies and organizations. So it's high time that we also start getting into. Now, friends, as I mentioned in the beginning, what is the journey on data analytics? I'll come to that. This is a chart which I have taken from one of the website which I like, this Baker Tilly. It tries to basically depict what are the various stages within an organization about stage of usage of data analytics. The first one being the descriptive one, and this is not something unique. I think you would have seen it elsewhere. Descriptive, which is hindsight, then diagnostic, which is insight, then predictive, which means foresight, and last is prescriptive, which is amplified intelligence and automation. My personal experience says that internal audit still continues to engage in the hindsight and the insight stages. It's not that a company would have moved from first stage to the last stage and stopped doing the first two stages. The first two are also important. The last one is very good. And my personal experience, very limited experience, and I would be very happy to be corrected, but I feel that hindsight and insight are still the bread and butter of internal audit functions, compliance functions, risk management functions. For risk management, they have to do predictive. They have to look at foresight as well. And then the last stage, which is cognitive intelligence and machine learning, they are more customer focused. They're more, sales focused, and then related to the product, how you develop product, how you protect your product, and all that. So I hope if you have any questions, please feel free to ask here. Otherwise, I'll just move forward. Okay. Now let's go back, flashback a little bit. 15 years ago, 2005 or 2004 maybe. I think if some of you would have been already working by that time, and I still remember at that time, we used to have some instances where the purchase registers were in hard copy registers sometimes in a mid-sized manufacturing company. And once I remember that I had to ask my junior to punch all those purchase entries or from hard copy to Excel so that we could analyze it. We analyzed and we found a lot of good audit points in terms of rates duplication, one same item being procured at higher rate, and and all that, all those typical internal audit findings. And I also remember that we used to have goods received notes, non-returnable gate pass, returnable gate pass, all in registers. Now, do you think that it is going to happen like that way? Everything is online, everything is on SMS, everything is on mobile apps. At that time, we didn't have smartphones. So things have changed drastically. And customer feedback register, I still remember myself doing a Domino's outlet audit, where I saw that in that outlet, there was a register where people were giving feedback. And I think still that practice continues in majority of similar outlets, not of the same company. But I could see that a lot of college people were coming and they were giving, okay, very good service, everything is fine, but we need a seating space. And then 85% of that. So what I had to do was I had to quantify that, counting that for last 1.5 years of feedback, recorded it, then analyzed and then recorded it, put it there. And then it was one finding which was really appreciated by the client. So, but then I had to convert that from hard copy to an Excel, and then we had to do something like that. And these kind of things do continue. For example, even in automobile, customer feedback used to come on hard copies, right? And still, I think some of the companies are taking on hard copy, but a lot of others, they are simply sending you a link and then you are just, giving your feedback there. I mean, just imagine Amazon starts taking your feedback on hard copy, it's dead. So now it is no longer valid, but those were the days and difficult days to really understand And nowadays the technology is there where when you click on a link, in fact, the company is able to trace that how many links you clicked, further steps, how many steps you did, and after that you left out. Even if you left out, that level of data is getting generated, and they are even able to see whether their feedback mechanism itself is long or whether it's too short or what it is. So compare to those situations and compare now, the things have changed drastically. So it is imperative that we also change drastically in the approaches that we have, but we cannot forget the back to basic approach at the same time. I am still, in the journey that we are talking about, I still remember doing data analysis on Excel sheets. We used to send emails, the other party will reply with, and I'm not saying it is not happening now, but in majority of the situations, it might still be happening. You send an email of the data, this period to this period, I need this report. The other party sends you the report. You validate it, you check it, you do some basic sanity checks, then start understanding the fields of the data, then you get into the analysis of their data, what meaning it could generate for you. Later on, it comes out that the data itself was wrong, and then you have to redo the work. How many of you have gone through this? I think most of us would have gone, but I would appreciate if there is some feedback. Similarly, when the data size increased, and I think for some organization it did not increase. For example, for an pure IT BPO kind of a scenario, Excel sheet analysis or Excel sheet audit would continue to be good for a longer time as compared to a telecom industry or a banking industry, or for that matter, any other data heavy industry. So then came the use of MS Access. People started using IDEA, people started using ECL and other CAT tools to analyze the bigger chunk of data. But the stage that I remember still is not that they were not using it because they wanted to do data analytics. They were majorly using it because the data itself could not be handled in Excel. So there was a limitation in Excel. That's why they went to next stage of getting into these tools. That was the starting point, and I think Deepji would agree with me. But and then once they got into it, they saw the benefits. Then they went into, oh my God, we can actually configure the way how we will look at the whole auditing scheme. And if we already know that in this process I'm going to check these 15 things, why not automate it? That was the thought, to bring efficiency, to focus more on other items, save man hours, whatever we can say. And then people got into continuous auditing. And I'm not saying that this is happening one stage at the other. Maybe for each organization it might be happening, all these activities might be happening parallelly in different functions, or they might be happening in a singular way. The story could be different, but these are the stages which I have observed. And then continuous auditing, what people came up with, they came up with the idea of already identified potential issues, already identified potential gaps based on the understanding of the processes that they already have. And, then configuring those data items into the existing reports. Now, remember, my friends, this was all happening in what we say, the data which is available in the IT systems, the RDBMS, relational database management systems. Nothing was there about the unstructured data at that time. Everything, whatever is there in Excel form or tabular form, you can analyze. If it is not there in tabular form, forget about it. That you have to cover by vouching. So then came the team of consultants, which they will say, okay, we are experts in your industry. I will give you 250, potential red flags applicable to your industry. You can pick up which one you want to choose. I will give you a technical, team of 2 to 3 people. They will, configure all that, and then they will basically implement the continuous auditing. And then based on the red flags, based on the positives that the report is giving, your team can then simply focus on checking, vouching, or detailed checking of those particular instances. So this is what happened in continuous auditing. I'm just looking at my chat. I've got one comment, I think. Yeah, okay, this was Satish. Yeah, sorry. So now coming from that stage, what came as a challenge? The challenge which I saw in my experience was that once people started doing continuous auditing, management started giving their responsibility to audit functions. And if something was missed out in that continuous auditing scenario, management started saying, finance team started saying, oh, this was never highlighted by audit. Mind you, my friends, we were third lines of defense, or maybe second line of defense. Then how come is it I'm responsible? Oh, no, you are responsible because you are the ones who had implemented this whole thing. Okay, fair enough. Then started continuous monitoring, which is nothing but the whole thing is that this whole thing got transferred as an ownership to the management side. They were the ones who got it implemented. They were the ones who were bringing out the positives and then getting it tested. But the ownership of comprehensiveness of these continuous monitoring controls or data points remained with the management. And then came the technology disruptions of readability of multiple platforms, readability of unstructured data, readability of social media data and all that, which has changed the whole thing, which has changed the whole scenario. And now we are talking about tools which will give us data which is picked up from multiple platforms, put it into one frame, and then we can analyze it. So usage of external data, especially databases got developed, credit rating data got developed, fraud indicators, all that has come up, and now we are at the stage where we are, like the one I was sharing earlier. So this is a journey which briefly I wanted to touch, but majorly I wanted to, why I touched upon this journey in a little bit detail was that there are certain learnings of how the data analytics should be implemented, but maybe I'll come to these success factors later on. First of all, I will discuss upon some important items. So we discussed about some important items. In the interest of again the back to basic approach, what I would like to discuss now is, even if you are from different industries, but I'm trying to give here some of the data points which should be part of our data analytics program. It should be part of our maybe continuous monitoring program, or whatever you have. You may have dashboard, you may have you might be using Tableau, you might be using some other tools. But the point is to cover these items somewhere so that you are able to cover your data analytics program in a comprehensive way. And then at the last, I will also come in those success factors, which have been my own learning in deployment of data analytics. The first and foremost data point is quality of our annual reports. And why I pick this up, because as internal auditors, I have seen that there is a tendency of people that they don't get into these things actually. They feel that this is a statutory auditor thing, and I'm not getting into this thing. Anyways, not my cup of tea. But my friends, I would like to differ here actually. What is the regulator looking at? And this is, I'm talking about NFRA, what they are looking at. They are now, you might have read somewhere, they have already selected some 18 listed companies, and they are reviewing their annual reports. What has their whole objective is to improve the quality of the annual reports. And this is nothing new. I mean, this is NFRA is doing this. In MCA, they have already been doing it. There have been so many seminars where, not seminars, but meetings where MCA used to call experts from Institute of Chartered Accountants and also other practitioners, where they used to discuss, we are seeing so many discrepancies in these kind of annual reports. What are you doing about it, etc. Now it has got to NFRA stage. And what are they looking at? They are picking up companies based on external impact risk, which is economical risk. So if a particular company, even if not listed, if the impact of dilution or any impairment of that particular company happens, if there is a significant impact to the overall economy in the eyes of the regulator, they will pick that company. What are the specific ratios which are required as per law? Specifically, for example, RBI has defined certain ratios. If someone is not able to meet those ratios, then they will get under the radar of NFRA. What is the risk? Otherwise, they are seeing material misstatement risk, which they will be based upon what is written in the auditor's report and the board's report. What are the other discrepancies in the disclosures? For example, they are looking at loan covenants and ratios, contingent liabilities, not current liabilities, impairment loss possibilities, quality of receivables. So one of the indicator that comes to my mind is, if in your company, for example, if you are into an EPC kind of a business, infrastructure projects, okay, your annual report says that management has said that there is no impairment loss. It is next to impossible. How is it possible? So they are going to pick this up. This is an unstructured data. This is not in tabular form, but they are picking this up. And then last but not the least, quality of disclosures on the specific points prescribed by law. For example, what kind of risks they have reported. Is it in parity with what other companies in the industry have reported, or it is something new, or they are missing out on something? What is the situation of related party transactions, how they have declared it, especially managerial remuneration. This managerial remuneration thing, it is a unique clause in India, where they have tried to limit the managerial remuneration to a particular extent unless and until the shareholders approve otherwise. So they want to see how the managerial remuneration has been calculated and how it is impacting the overall annual report and the CARO related pointers. The point which I'm trying to highlight, my friends, here is some of these must be actually, if I am implementing a data analytics program in my company, then I would rather speak to my finance head and I would rather work out with him and work out some data points which will start monitoring of these points for my own company by myself, rather than someone else coming and telling me that there is a problem. I will find the problem myself. But of course, buy-in from the finance is very much required. But it is good to do that because regulator does it. It's better that you do it yourself and correct things where they're going wrong. Then the second point is on the revenue. Revenue side, I mean, nothing new, but aging of account receivable is very important. But the mistake that I have seen people doing in data analytics is they are only looking at the aging part of it, the overall, how much of how much. But that doesn't reveal anything, right? If we are doing it segment wise, which becomes comparable, for example, a service division AR versus a EPC or a project business AR versus a retail business AR will be totally different. And one company, these days big companies have big different kind of verticals, different kind of businesses. So it should be analyzed business wise, segment wise, is what I'm saying. And this is my pointer for inclusion of this item in this report. Unbilled is the biggest indicator of a potential risk. And if you have a situation where unbilled is going beyond a particular threshold, for example, the industry norm of your company is that unbilled of say 10 to 15% is there. Say you're doing a project business, for example, which is milestone based billing, and if it goes to 30%, it should be tracked somewhere. And the moment it goes beyond 15%, it should raise a red flag somewhere. So someone should be able to track this, and we need to track this. Okay, I'm a comment which has come from Shailesh. Compliance piece with control check needs to be tagged with associated risk. Maybe holistic governance risk and compliance. Yes, I agree, Shailesh. I agree with you. This is what I'm trying to discuss here, how to connect whole of this. But first of all, the key success factor of data analytics program, successful implementation of data analytics program in your organization is our understanding of what we need to track. And that is what, I'm trying to discuss here. Then unshipped materials, and this is not available in your accounting system. You will have to take confirmations, but yes, you need to take this confirmation periodically and need to monitor where we are. Value awaiting delivery, Forex. Yeah, so in the Forex business, I have seen that sometimes there is a practice that for your, renowned customers, not renowned, but your old customers, good customers, you extend some credit facility, even if you are dealing with foreign currency. So they will tell you, I will take this currency on so and so date, considering that they plan to go outside, or they need forex, but at the same time they are anticipating that the the valuation will go up and they will have to spend more later, so they might book it just now, and you give them this facility. But at the same time, this will be shown as a sale, but the forex is lying in your vault. This is my own experience. And then if you try to look at what is the valuation loss and how you are doing it, it could result in a working capital blockage. Not only that, but inflation of your sales. And what is the extent of it? The whole question is monitoring of data analysis is to see the extent of things. These all are typical business situations which keep on happening. But the point is to start monitoring that, and if it goes beyond a stage, then it should raise some alarms. There is another chat. Yeah, okay. Then industry benchmarks in comparison with company data. I've already discussed this. Doubtful JVs path. This is something I would like to say. I have seen one red flag in my own experience where, just because someone wanted to play with the aging part, he was just passing an entry about account receivable and then reversing it, which means the account receivable total amount will remain as it is and on a particular date when it is getting monitored, but the aging will restart from zero. So it's rebucketing of your account receivables. And how this was caught was, we could see a trend that this is happening every month for certain specific parties when we looked at the entire data. So why not to configure this kind of check that whenever such reversals are happening, and if it is happening on a repeated way in a particular span of time, then it gets highlighted somewhere. This is just a thought. We have some fraud like this, and then that is why I am saying. Then the cash flow trend, my friend, I always tell my friends that while profit and loss account and balance sheet, they are the structure, they are the muscles of the profit, especially is the muscle of the organization, but cash is the blood. So if you don't have blood, muscle is of no use. And then the point is, this is where the entire all the fiascos that we have seen, the P&Ls looked very good, but the cash position was very bad, and people did not focus on cash that much. So looking at the cash position, as auditor, as GRC professionals, we should look at the cash position. And then again, I'm suggesting that we should look at it in a segment-wise way. And it should be part of our overall monitoring. It should be part of our overall dashboards that we have, that where we are. And then if possible, we should embed this to the project level also. If it is embedded to the project level, then that is the best thing, because it's then at the project level, it can be linked to the performance bank guarantees that you will submit, or the advance amount that you would have given, how much is being tackled at that way. But at an overall level, at least at a segment level or a sector level or a business unit level, it must be analyzed. And if the cash position is not good, if there is a negative cash flow, especially the negative cash flow projects must be monitored very closely, not only by the project manager, but also by someone independent who is not responsible for execution. And that is how you will be able to prevent the risks happening to the organization. So business unit KPIs are also very important. See, I am giving you some of the points which are generic, which will be applicable to all the companies. But then there are specific industries where specific indicators are very important. For example, if you go to a BPO, for them cost per hire is very important. If you go to a Domino's store, cost per delivery is very important. How much I'm spending in delivering something. Swiggy also, like that, they will see. If you go to automobile, cost per car of a part, how much that is really critical. So this is just example. If you go to Airtel, for example, how many customer complaints are dealt with in so much time, that is also critical. So depending upon each process within the company and each company, each industry, there are certain key performance indicators that the management has already defined, or even if they are not defined, they know it. And help them. If they are not defined in your organization, please help them to define them and then focus on those key parameters. If your overall key parameters are okay, you are okay. If your overall key parameters are not okay, then there is a problem. It should not happen that the entire department individuals have worked very, very well, but the department has not worked. It should be other way around. So looking at KPIs and including them in understanding the business focus, and then including that into your data analytics program is very useful. For another example I give is from the risk management side. For example, these days there is a lot of talk about supply chain costs going up because of multiple reasons. One of the reason being shortage of containers, other reason being shortage of chips. Chips are impacting not only automobile but many other industries. So and then raw material costs are also increasing. So what will happen? You might have, as an industry, you might have, say, you will have a benchmark that, okay, my cargo used to come around 5% of CIF. The moment you start tracking it, and then you come to, okay, now it has gone to 12%. You immediately raise an alarm to your finance team and to your other, budgeting team within the projects, within the BUs. You tell them, okay, you need to look at whether you want to take that into account into your forecast and look at it as an opportunity, or you want to continue with this risk, but we'll start specifically tracking it. So this is how we'll need to work out. This is just some example. I'm conscious on time. And then on expenses, we have department KPIs, we have cash flow trends, duplicate payments, duplicate addresses with masters, bank guarantees submitted, what is the aging of that, when are we going to get money, orders intake versus cost of goods. So my friend, this is very important. If you are especially on the sales commission side, if your orders are going down and sales commission is going up, there is some problem, right? Wastages, input output ratios, what is the wastage that your company has already defined as a standard, as a target, and then against that you are monitoring it. My friend, all these things are already getting done in silos. My experience says in different departments, these things are getting monitored in silos. The BU head will know it. He might have a presentation also. But the whole point is to include that once you include that into the data analytics program, it becomes much more transparent, number one. Number two, the authority of or authenticity of the data is much more better. And then thirdly, it can work, it can delve into your risk management function. It can be a great input there, because when it remains in silos, you might not actually see at an overall enterprise level how it is impacting. Sales returns, I'm not reading everything because all of these, quite of them are self-explanatory. But these are some items which I thought, yes, some of the items which I would like to specifically talk about is related to, especially related to significant tax adjustments. If you see that there are in a company, which means provisions, that means something is going wrong. I mean, some process is wrong. So that becomes a risk, and then you need to investigate that. So that should also come as part of your reporting to you, maybe not in a tool, maybe otherwise, but it should be part of somewhere. Payroll variance analysis is the key thing. Standard costing changes, how they are happening, on what basis they have been done. Indications of vigil mechanism. Audit committees, my experience says, some of the audit committees have started asking, what is the category of complaints that you get? Because see, only 1 or 2% are actual real fraud complaints. Rest of them are highlighting the culture. Someone will say, I didn't get the food on time. Someone was, someone broke, I remember in my automobile days, during that time, the demonetization had happened. Someone complained to the vigil mechanism that a senior guy came and he broke the row, to go into ATM, which is against the ethos of the company of equality for all the ranks. So these kind of complaints. So audit committees want you to analyze this and then report it. So you will be able to do that only when you have a system to do that, right? So these are some ratios. And last but not the least on this point, these are some ratios which I have listed, which are standard accounting ratios. any annual report of any company you take, you will be able to calculate these ratios. But my friends, I have seen, including myself, I also never bothered to use these ratios for my own analysis of my own company unless I found something later on. Okay. So my suggestion is we should try to analyze these ratios. Look at, even if year on year, look at, if possible, look at quarterly results if you are a listed company and see how these ratios are changing. It will tell you a lot. So coming to the last point, which is success factor, if you look at all these items in a good way, what is the success factor? What is my journey, which says that, what have been the success factors? The first and foremost is understanding of KPIs of various functions and comparison with others. If you don't do that, you will never be able to, actually get the right level of buy-in. And I'm again talking about hindsight. I'm in the first three stages of data analytics. I'm not talking about the customer side because I think we will not be involved on that side. That will be sales side. Then cost of data analytics and benefit of data analytics. Now, I only propose to you guys, okay, whether we should start looking at how many people worked on holidays, for example, right? But then we have to look at what is the cost of, starting to monitor that versus what will be the benefit. This is the question that management will ask you. So for each of the control, each of the measure that you are going to put into your company, you need to ask yourself how important that is, because every company to company, it might change. In one company, the customer service department will be the most critical. In another company, it might not be so critical, right? So it is dependent upon what kind of business, what kind of risk, what kind of value, or the revenue associated. You need to look at the cost of data analytics and benefit of data analytics, and then decide what all things should be included. Because whatever you include, ultimately, you will have to spend resources on tackling the positives also. I mean, the red flags which are getting highlighted. Then relevance of data analytics is also important. The period. I mean, right now, a particular thing will be very interesting to be implemented. But do we foresee that this is going to be there for next 5 years? If it is not so, then it is better to do that analysis for 1 year on your Excel sheet. It is fine. But if you think that this particular process, this particular data item is going to stay there for next 5 years, then yes, do it. Include it into your data analytics program. Return on investment and return off investment. Return on investment is what I say this, I mean, which means how many man hours I say, but return off investment means it should, which is linked to the period, that it should not happen that I built something which is of no use later. Then clarity on the requirements is key. If I am not clear what I want, my technical guy will never be able to help me. And continued expert technical support is key. See, I have seen, I'm learned by mistakes that, if you don't have a continued technical support, if you feel that, I will buy a license of idea and then I will do it on myself after learning it for 6 months, my personal experience is it's going to be tough. Nothing is impossible in this world, but this is going to be tough. My feeling is we need technical support, we need experts, and why not to leverage them? And then, because the whole point is, it is an ever-changing thing. Data analytics program is not something static. It will keep changing. You will have new learnings, you will have new situations, you will have new processes, and therefore the entire thing keeps on changing, even on a fortnightly basis. So you need someone who is able to, support you in that, but there has to be a career progression for that person, or otherwise take an external help. And then last but not the least, ownership issues within the organization have to be sorted. And I always say safe is better than gaffe, because the point is that it is better to say that I cannot own this, rather than later on getting into a problem with the stakeholders that you did it the wrong way. And concurrence with the stakeholders, even if I have suggested so many things to be included, but if you feel that these things cannot be included in the culture of your organization or in the whole scheme of things, don't do it. Because ultimately our objective as GRC professionals, we can only propose, but then management has to buy in on those points. So do not start implementing something which is not bought in. This is it from my side. Any questions, etc. I'm more than happy to take.
Thank you, Naval. Thank you, Naval. It was a fantastic rundown of your journey of data analytics. There isn't any question on the chat box or in the question and answer. One of the questions that had come, you had answered it, and of course, Sailesh Agarwal had also given an opinion, which was a very correct opinion. I had a couple of questions, but one of them you answered it yourself. I was wanting to know what kind of skills are required for a data analysis, and your last slide said it all, and it clearly showed your personal experience in this data analytics program. Just one question I thought, then I'll leave it to Dipji to see if he can add anything more. One was, of course, on the regulation side, whether more regulations are required in India, or the regulations are enough and adequate. It's only the implementation that has to come up. But you have kind of more or less answered this question. Uh, I just had one question, which probably you can give us a little insight on. There are various tools of data analytics in the market, and if I don't begin by saying idea, I think Dipji and I will not really be on talking terms, which it doesn't suit me at all. So there are tools like Idea, Power BI, there is SAP Business Objects, there is Click, there is Tableau, there is Metabase. There's so many tools that are really available, and each one obviously has its own advantages and disadvantages. But maybe Dipji will definitely say Idea is the best, and I'm kind of aligned with that as well. But the question is, how do you really choose a data analysis tool? I mean, is there some way to, if you can just very quickly elaborate, just tell us this, because we are actually running short of time, just in a minute or two. Thank you.
That is a very good question. And I would first of all give a disclaimer that I have a very limited experience, but how I can just share that. My idea is, my idea, okay, it comes to idea, but my thought has always been, I select the service provider than the tool. So, sharing my own experience of past, when I did selection at that time, I interviewed not only people from Idea, I interviewed people from ACL, I interviewed people from, Auditime, many others, and then it was not about the tool, because tools will be more or less not same, but more or less your requirements will be catered by all the tools. More important is who is going to deliver it, whether he is able to align with your objectives, whether he is able to give you a path. In fact, I asked them a question: if I give you a free hand, how you will implement? Someone came and said that, sir, we will sell you this license, we will train your people for 6 months and then we'll go away. I said, okay, namaste. I cannot do it, I know that. So someone else would have taken this approach, because this was a cost optimum approach, because the cost was lesser side. So it depends on priorities. But my priority was to ensure that, it is sustainable, we are able to deliver. Then someone came, then he said that, Naval, I will be able to, give you a resource which will be on a standby, and you can take care of that. So it was a little bit of mix. Then someone said, I will give you a list of repository of all the risks applicable to your company, and then this guy will come, and then in 1 month it will be up and running. I said, okay, this looks like a long shot. But so it all depends upon, who you are interacting with, what is the comfort level you gain, and then, decide. And it also depends upon the organization, actually. Some organization may not have a cost appetite, so they might ask me to actually do it the first way. But that is not my preference. My preference would be, as I mentioned, if there is a continued support available, to take that and build it in a sustainable way so that we can drive value. I hope I have answered.
Very nice. So there's the chat boxes. There are a couple of compliments on the chat box. Chetan has said that it was a very nice session, and Dheeraj Sharma, though of course I think he had to leave, but he said it was very insightful, had a lot of ideas and information, and since he had another call, probably he needed to leave. So that's it, Dipji. I think I've done my task reasonably well. Naval, of course, is the hero of the day. Dipji, I hand it over back to you in case you need to have your last closing comments. But I must say, Naval, this has been a fantastic evening, 1 hour, 60 minutes of great learning, great fun, and coming more from, bottom of your heart, since you've been there and done it, those kind of people. So thank you very much and have a very great evening from my side. So Dipji, maybe the last few words.
Thank you very much, Naval. Thanks a lot, Satish. Wonderful. As Satish has said, great learning, great fun, coming straight from your heart. You just went on speaking about it. And the special icing on the cake is in this session. We have had so many sessions. Every session has its own specialty. Today's session, what came out very clearly was the regulatory impact and the regulations which are coming out around data analytics. So I think that is one area where every professional has to watch out what's happening in the external environment and align oneself to the external environment. So I think that came out very clearly in your presentation. So great, and thank you very much, Naval, once again, because in spite of your busy schedule, you have packed into this, come to your seat, done this session in the time, and absolutely dot on. So and thanks a lot, Satish, for being the host today. So thank you very much, and thanks to all the participants, and look forward to the next session next Wednesday, Analytics Wednesday, 7 p.m. Thank you, everybody. Thanks a lot.
Bye. Bye,
Thank
Naval.
you.
Bye, Dipji. Bye,
Good evening to
Jairam.
all.
Thank you. Bye. Good night.